I caught my wife lying the night I walked into our house and heard two wine glasses clink together from the dining room, even though I knew for a fact we only ever used the tall-stemmed ones when we had guests. She told me she had a migraine earlier that day and wanted to go to bed early, which was why she said she wouldn't be joining me at my friend Leo's birthday dinner. I didn't argue. I kissed her on the forehead and left. But Leo's dinner got canceled last minute because his brother had a biking accident and ended up with 6 stitches, so I turned around and drove home without texting her, thinking I'd surprise her with takeout and maybe a warm bath if her headache hadn't knocked her out cold. Instead, I walked through the door and saw 2 plates on the table, freshly used, a bottle of Pinot half gone, and her purse on the kitchen counter. Odd, because she always hung it on the hook near the entry. She must have heard the door because her voice carried from upstairs, casual, too casual, like she was reading a script from some badly written play. "Hey babe, you're back early." I didn't answer right away. I walked into the kitchen first, glanced at the dishes, 2 sets of silverware, a single crumpled napkin with lipstick that wasn't her usual shade. She wore this muted rose color she'd been obsessed with for months, but the print on the napkin was bright red. Fire engine red. I picked it up, stared at it for a few seconds, then dropped it back like it burned. Still, I said nothing. "I thought Leo's party was going to run late," she said when I reached the stairs, her head poking out from the bedroom door. She had already changed into one of her oversized sweatshirts, hair pulled back, no trace of makeup. Like she just rolled out of bed. "It got canceled," I replied, pausing at the top step. "His brother got hurt, so I figured I'd come back and spend the night with you instead." I didn't even look at her. I stared down the hallway behind her, into our half-lit bedroom. It smelled faintly of cologne, not mine. Something stronger, more musky, with a scent that lingered in a way that pissed me off without even trying. She hesitated for half a second. "Oh, well, I was just about to take a shower. I've had a rough day." She smiled too wide, too quick, then disappeared into the bathroom like nothing was wrong. I stood there, not moving, not saying anything, just listening. She turned on the shower. That's when I heard it. A noise from the backyard, the faint metallic rattle of the side gate latching shut. It had this distinct sound ever since the windstorm last year bent one of the hinges, and no one except me and the guy who did our landscaping ever used it. I moved fast, cut through the hallway, and opened the sliding door just in time to see someone duck around the back corner. A guy. He was wearing dark clothes and moving quick, like he knew exactly how to avoid the motion light by the shed. "Hey," I shouted, but I didn't chase him. I didn't need to. I saw enough. When I went back inside, she was already out of the shower, towel-wrapped and wet hair dripping onto the carpet. She looked surprised to see me still standing there, not fooled by her performance. "What's wrong?" she asked, tilting her head. I took a deep breath, long enough to stop myself from exploding right then and there. "You had someone over." "What?" Her face twitched, just a flicker, but it was there. "Are you serious?" "I told you, I had a migraine." "Don't insult me," I cut her off. I saw him leave through the side gate. There were 2 wine glasses on the table, 2 plates, and a napkin with lipstick that isn't yours. She opened her mouth, closed it, then tried again. It wasn't what it looked like. "Oh, so who was he then? Jehovah's Witness? Wine and a meal before preaching the gospel." She turned cold then. Just like that. The fake surprise dropped, and what replaced it was this look I hadn't seen before. Annoyance. Not guilt. Not fear. Just annoyance, like I was the one making her life harder. "I didn't want you to find out like this," she said flatly. "Then how were you planning for me to find out? On a PowerPoint? Email with bullet points? AF ****** ing apology cake?" She didn't answer. Instead, she walked into the bedroom, shut the door, and left me standing there in the hallway, fist clenched, heart pounding like it wanted to break out of my chest. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my back to her, staring at the corner of the room where the paint was slightly chipped from when we moved the dresser. The silence between us was louder than any shouting match we ever had. She didn't say anything either, just got into bed, turned away from me, and let the darkness do the rest. It was like sharing a room with someone who had already decided they were done. My mind kept replaying the sound of the gate, the way she stood in the hallway pretending like nothing had happened, the second wine glass, the wrong lipstick. I didn't need a full confession. I had lived with this woman long enough to know when she was hiding something. The worst part wasn't even the cheating, not really. It was how easy she made the lie look, how routine she made it feel, like I was just another calendar entry she had to reschedule. By the next morning, she was acting like it never happened. She was making coffee, feeding the dog, scrolling through her phone like the night before had been a dream. I watched her from the kitchen doorway. Her face was calm, distant, like a customer service rep dealing with a minor complaint. I couldn't stomach it. "You gonna talk?" I asked, and my voice sounded rougher than I expected. She didn't look up. "About what?" "You know exactly what." She sighed, finally set the phone down, then turned to face me like I was the problem. "You came home early, saw something, jumped to conclusions, and now what? You want me to grovel? Cry? Make a scene so you can feel like the victim?" "I saw him," I said, louder this time. "I didn't jump to anything. I saw a guy leave our backyard. You had dinner with him. In our house. At our table. And..." She said it like she was daring me to react. "Don't act like it's normal." "It's not normal, but I'm not going to stand here and be interrogated either." "So that's it? You don't deny it? You just admit it like it's a parking ticket." She picked up her mug and took a sip like we were just discussing groceries. "I'm not denying anything. I'm also not apologizing. You cheated. I did something I wanted to do. That's not the same as cheating." I couldn't believe how calm she was. Like the last 8 years meant nothing. Like I was the one being unreasonable for expecting honesty and respect. "You brought him here," I said. "You could have at least had the decency to take your mess somewhere else. But no, you brought him into our home like it was yours alone." She looked me straight in the eye and said, "It is mine. I live here. I work just as hard as you do. I don't need your permission to invite someone over. Not someone you're screwing," I snapped. She paused, gave me this look like she was measuring whether I was worth the energy. "It wasn't like that." "Really? You gonna try that?" "Then what was it?" "A workshop on how to ruin your husband's life." "You think too highly of yourself," she said quietly. "This wasn't about you." That hit harder than anything else. Not because it was cruel, but because she meant it. She had already mentally erased me from her plans, from her conscience, from whatever the hell she thought this arrangement still was. "I want to know how long this has been going on." She shrugged. "A few weeks. A couple months. I don't know. Does it matter?" "It does to me." "Well, I didn't plan to tell you, so I wasn't keeping track." I took a step back, trying to process the coldness in her answers. She wasn't even trying to soften the blow, to lie her way through it with the usual garbage people feed each other to keep the peace. She was done, not just with the lie, but with the idea that she owed me anything. "Why?" I asked. She set her mug down. "Because I needed something different. Something that wasn't routine. Something that didn't feel like I was just checking off another box on a long to-do list." "So you risked our marriage for some thrill?" She gave me a look I couldn't read. "It wasn't a risk. It was a decision. And that was it. No tears. No guilt. No regret. Just a decision, like picking a new color for the bathroom walls." The woman I married had left the building a long time ago, and whoever was standing in front of me now didn't care what I thought, how I felt, or what this would do to us. I didn't say a word for the next 3 days. I went to work like nothing had happened, came home on time, ate whatever leftovers were in the fridge, and slept on the couch. She didn't make any attempt to reach out or talk. No notes, no texts, no awkward small talk while brushing teeth or standing in the kitchen waiting for the microwave to beep. She acted like the entire confrontation never happened, and that silence between us somehow made everything feel even worse. Every moment she didn't try to fix anything only confirmed what I had already figured out. She wasn't sorry, and she had no intention of pretending otherwise. On the 4th night, I came home early. She was in the backyard, sitting on the lounge chair like she always did when she was in one of her moods, headphones in, drink in hand, face relaxed like she had the house to herself. I stood at the back door for a few seconds, just watching her. Then I walked out, and she didn't flinch. "We're going to talk," I said, standing in front of her. She paused her music, pulled out one earbud, and looked up at me like I was a door-to-door salesman. "I thought we already did that," she said. "No, we didn't. You talked. I listened. Now it's my turn." She sat up slightly, not because she cared, but because she knew I wasn't going to drop it. I didn't sit down. I stayed standing. She hated that. "You can do whatever you want with your time. You can see who you want. You can call this a marriage or not, but you're not going to turn this house into a playground for your side relationships. You're not my father," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No, I'm your husband. At least on paper. And that's the problem. You've said what you had to say. Now you're going to listen." "Fine," she said and leaned back, arms folded, pretending to be bored. But I knew she was listening. "I know who he is. I followed him." She raised an eyebrow, clearly caught off guard. "Last Tuesday," I continued, "after work. I waited at the corner. I saw him get out of your car. I saw you kiss him before he shut the door. I didn't need a camera or a private investigator. I needed 10 minutes and the nerve to finally stop pretending this was something we could fix. She stayed quiet. That was new. So now I'm not asking you anymore. I'm telling you. You want this guy, go be with him. But you're not bringing him back into this house. Not while I'm still in it. You're making this dramatic. You think this is dramatic? You had a whole dinner with him here. You let him sit in my chair. You made him food with the same hands you used to touch me. You had him in the backyard, probably right where you're sitting now. And you're calling me dramatic. I didn't screw him here, if that's what you're asking. I didn't ask? But thanks for clarifying. That makes it so much better. She looked away then. Not ashamed, just tired of the conversation. You want to know what I think? I said, and I leaned forward so she had to look at me again. I think you've already made your choice. I think you're trying to act like this is about something more than just wanting attention. But deep down, you know exactly what this is. You got bored. And instead of talking to me, you went and played house with someone who doesn't even know what kind of person you really are. She stood up then, glass still in hand. Eyes sharp. You don't get to stand here and act like the perfect husband. You were checked out months ago. You barely looked at me unless I put something in front of you. You stopped asking how I was. You just assumed I'd always be here. And you assumed I'd never find out. I didn't care if you did. Well, now you know I have. And now I get to decide what happens next. I'm not begging for forgiveness. Good. I wouldn't give it. We stood there, a few feet apart, in the place we once celebrated birthdays and hosted dinners, and I realized it wasn't anger holding me together anymore. It was something worse, clarity. I wasn't going to fix her. I wasn't going to drag her back to what we had. She didn't want that, and frankly, neither did I. I just hadn't admitted it until now. She was out of the house the next evening. I didn't ask where she was going, and she didn't volunteer the information. Just grabbed her bag, checked her reflection in the hallway mirror, and left with that same calm look she always wore when she thought she was being subtle. I waited 20 minutes after she was gone, then went to the bedroom and opened the drawer where she kept her jewelry. Tucked under the velvet box with her earrings was a small key fob. I had seen her use it twice, both times pretending it belonged to a client's storage unit. I never questioned it, mostly because I didn't want to be that guy paranoid, snooping, insecure. But now, with everything out in the open, I had no interest in preserving that false dignity. I took the key and drove across town, not stopping until I reached a small building tucked behind a warehouse complex. I had only been here once, months ago, when she picked up a chair someone had given her from an estate sale. That's what she told me, at least. The key fit the lock. Inside, it looked more like a temporary apartment than a storage unit. Fold-up table, 2 chairs, mattress on the floor, lamp, a box of random clothes. I opened the box. Men's clothes. Not mine. Different sizes, some new, some worn. I found a receipt from a nearby department store dated last week. It had her card information on it. She was shopping for him, cooking for him, bringing him here. Probably right after she left work while I was still logged into meetings at home. I didn't break anything. I didn't trash the place. I took pictures, every corner, every item, the box, the receipts, the mattress. Then I locked the door, got in my car, and drove straight to my lawyer's office. He wasn't expecting me, but I walked in anyway and asked for 10 minutes. He gave me an hour. I handed him the photos, the key, and explained everything I'd found. He didn't look surprised. He had heard stories like mine a dozen times over. Still, he listened carefully, nodded a few times, and said, "If you want to hit back, I can help you do it right." The next 2 days were quiet. She acted normal, like everything between us had returned to some default setting where we just didn't talk unless we had to. She was still sleeping in the bedroom while I stayed on the couch. Every now and then, she asked if I'd eaten, or if I'd seen her phone charger, but nothing more. I didn't answer most of the time. I was too busy gathering everything I needed, copies of the mortgage documents, bank statements, screenshots of messages I recovered from her old laptop that she forgot to wipe clean before switching to her new one. She used to think I was clueless when it came to tech. That was her mistake. I found logs, photos, even a few half-deleted messages she thought were long gone. All of it went straight to the lawyer. Saturday morning, she came downstairs dressed like she had somewhere to be again. I was sitting at the table, sorting through some mail. She walked past me, grabbed a banana from the counter, and said, "I'll be back later. Don't wait up." This time, I looked up. "You're going to the storage unit?" She froze, mid-bite, just for a second. "What are you talking about?" "I found it. The key. The mattress. The receipts. You really thought I wouldn't figure it out. She put the banana down and stared at me. You had no right to go there. I had every right. You're still my wife. You went through my stuff. You invaded my privacy. You gave that up the moment you started bringing someone else into our life like I wasn't even here. She folded her arms, leaned against the counter. So what now? You want to fight? You want to yell and throw things? No, I said. I already filed. You'll get served next week. My lawyer has everything. Photos. Documents. Your messages. The receipts for the clothes you bought him. Even the rental agreement in your name. She didn't speak. Just stared at me like she was trying to figure out if I was bluffing. I'm not asking you to leave. I'm not throwing your clothes out the window. But we're done, and we both know it. You're acting like I'm the only one who checked out. No, I said calmly. You're just the one who walked out without bothering to tell me. She didn't leave that day. I expected her to pack a bag or slam a door or throw some kind of fit. But instead, she walked into the living room, sat on the arm of the couch, and looked at me like she was waiting for a different version of the conversation to play out. I wasn't offering one. I didn't know her that anymore. She must have realized it too, because after a long silence she finally said, "So this is it?" I didn't even look up from the envelope I was sealing. It was at the moment you brought him into our house. You just didn't care enough to notice. She took a deep breath, shifted in her seat, then stood. I think we should talk. We're talking. No, she said, pacing now. I mean really talk. You haven't asked me why. You haven't even let me explain. You already explained. You said you wanted something different. You said it wasn't about me. That's all I need to know. Don't you want to know what led me there? What made me feel like this was the only option? I want to know when you stopped respecting me. That's all I really care about. She stopped pacing and turned toward me. It wasn't about respect. It was. It always is. You could have said something. You could have told me you were unhappy or confused or wanted out. But you decided to sneak around and lie. That's not confusion. That's a choice. I didn't know how to say it. You didn't want to say it. Big difference. You make it sound like I planned everything. Like I woke up one day and said, "Let me ruin everything." You didn't ruin it in a day. You ruined it every time you looked me in the eye and pretended nothing was happening. She sat back down, this time on the couch. I missed feeling important. I looked at her for the first time in what felt like hours. You weren't invisible. I asked about your day. I helped with your business. I showed up to everything you asked me to. What did I miss? It's not about the stuff you did, she said, looking down at her hands. It's about how I felt. And I didn't feel wanted. You stopped being honest with me. That's how I stopped wanting anything. I didn't plan to fall for him. But you did. She nodded slowly. He listened. He noticed things. He made me feel like I still mattered. I did all that before you decided I was background noise. She didn't answer. Probably because she knew I was right. I didn't cheat because I hate you, she said. I know. That would have made it easier. So what happens now? I move on. And you figure out if this guy was worth it. I don't know if he is. Then that's your problem. She stayed quiet for a minute. Then she asked, "Are you going to tell your family?" I already did. My sister knows. My brother knows. My parents will figure it out soon enough. What did you tell them? The truth. She looked like she wanted to argue that, but she didn't. Maybe she knew better than to try. I'm not out to destroy you, I said. I didn't send your photos to your friends. I didn't call your mom. I didn't torch your business online. I just filed the paperwork and made a clean exit. Why didn't you? Because I'm not like you. She stood up, crossed her arms, then sat back down again. You think you're better than me? No. I just think I handled it better. You want me to leave? I don't care what you do. But I'm not playing roommate with someone who used our home as a side project. I'll find a place. Take your time. Just know I won't be here waiting for you to decide what kind of life you want. I already know what I want. I raised an eyebrow. Do you? She hesitated, looked at the floor, then back at me. I want to fix this. It's not fixable. You haven't even let me try. I did, months ago. You just didn't notice. The last conversation we had as husband and wife happened 2 days later, in the kitchen where we used to argue about whose turn it was to do dishes or what we'd order for dinner. She came downstairs in the early evening, holding a notebook in her hand like she was preparing for an interview, not a final goodbye. I was standing by the counter sorting some documents for the bank and didn't look up when she entered. I had already made peace with the fact that nothing she would say would change the direction this was heading. She waited for a few seconds before speaking. I wrote some things down. I didn't know if I should say them, or if you'd even care to hear it. I said nothing. She took that as permission to continue. I was selfish, she began, as not leaving the notebook, and I lied, and I disrespected you, and I understand that it's not something I can undo. But I need you to understand that I didn't do it because you weren't enough. I did it because I convinced myself I was entitled to more, that I deserved something new, and I didn't stop to think what that said about me. I kept organizing the papers, not because I needed to, but because looking directly at her made it feel heavier than I wanted it to be. I've gone over it 100 times in my head, she went on. Every moment I could have stopped. Every time I could have told you the truth or even just walked away before it got worse. I didn't, and I can't take it back. You don't need to keep explaining, I said without raising my voice. I get it now. We stopped being something solid a long time ago. You just made the break obvious. She finally looked at me, and her voice cracked for the first time since this started. Do you hate me? No, I said honestly. I don't hate you, but I also don't see the person I married anymore. I think I lost her too. You didn't lose her. You chose to leave her behind. She sat down at the table, silent for a moment, like she was waiting for some kind of permission to be emotional. I miss us, she whispered. So do I said. But the version of us that you're talking about stopped existing before the affair. This was just the result, not the cause. She looked like she wanted to argue, but didn't have the energy. I'm moving out on Sunday, she said. Found a short-term lease. Furnished place, nothing fancy. Good. I'll come back next week for the rest of my things. I won't be here. Where will you be? Not sure yet. I might go stay with Mark for a few days. She nodded like she didn't know what to say next. You'll get the papers from my lawyer this week, I added. There's nothing in there you didn't expect. We split everything clean. No tricks. No anger. I'm sorry, she said again, softer this time. I believe you. It just doesn't change anything. Do you think someday we'll be able to talk like friends? Maybe, I said. But right now, I'm just trying to get through the rest of the week without falling apart. She stood up then, picked up her notebook, and hesitated near the doorway. I hope you find someone who actually shows up for you the way you showed up for me. I hope you learn to stop running from what you destroy. She didn't respond. She just walked away, and I stayed there at the counter, staring at the last of the paperwork that used to represent our life together. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt like a chapter had ended, and there was nothing else left to do except close the book and start again somewhere else. Not because I wanted to, but because I finally had to.